right, it's 7:07. I'll call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of the Beloit City Council on Monday, December 21st. We're in the City Hall Forum. The first item is roll call.
Roll call shows that all 7 city councilors are present.
And the second item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item is item number 3, special order of the day and or announcements. 3A is a presentation of the 2009 Neighborhood Partnership Awards from the International City Managers Association. Helping us with that today is Todd Schmidt, the city manager for the city of Milton. Mr. Schmidt, if you could join us. I would also add that Mr. Schmidt's city has had recent and successful experience with at least 3 traffic roundabouts. And so he knows how they work, and if you got any questions, ask him.
I wasn't expecting that to come up this evening. Although I do get a lot of questions about it.
I'm sure you do.
Remember, yield to the left.
And they work
yield
well.
To the left, and,
they work
and off
well.
you go. It is my pleasure to be here this evening. Thank you for having me. This is a great day and a great opportunity for me personally to present a very important award to the city and to your city manager. I'm a member of the International City Management Association, and I'm also the vice president of the Wisconsin City County Management Association. So for some reason that makes me the proper person to come and present this to you this evening, and it's my pleasure to do that. Let me begin just by mentioning that ICMA has a particular mission to create excellence in local government by advocating and developing the professional management of local government worldwide. As part of their effort to do that, in supporting their over 9,000 members internationally, is to promote programs that have been spurred by local governments across the world and set them as examples for other governments to follow and learn from. So that is sort of the basis behind the awards program that we're talking about today. I can also tell you that the program that Beloit won is from the Community Partnership Award Program for communities between 10,000 and 50,000 population. For 2009, there were 13 applicants for that program, or nominees for that particular award from 8 different states. So this is an important company that you're in, and to be chosen is certainly an important feat. I'd like to begin, particularly for those who might be watching or in the audience today who aren't aware of the project, is to just read a brief description of the project that was in the awards program that was presented by ICMA at the International Conference, which is in Montreal this past September. The Fairbank Flats apartments were an eyesore in Beloit in spite of their history. Built during World War I as temporary housing for African American workers brought from the deep south to fill manpower shortages, they are Wisconsin's only known existing community housing project built exclusively for African American workers. But by 1999, the flats sat vacant and deteriorating. The city bought the property at salvage value, intending to demolish the buildings and redevelop or land bank the site for future use. Residents concerned about historic preservation asked the city to give them time to find a way to develop the site while preserving its history. For the next 4 years, residents and city council members with staff support from the city manager and assistant manager, hi Steve, explored and rejected numerous alternatives. In 2006, a developer that specialized in tax credit projects entered the picture, and after obtaining historic preservation and low-income housing tax credits, construction began in 2008. Today, Fairbanks Flats has the look and feel of the original design, but its 16 rent-to-own row homes for low to moderate income families and people with disabilities meet the need for affordable housing in the 21st century. That's the description of your project, of your very successful project. ICMA noted 3 important lessons that can be learned. If governments work with their residents, they can find viable solutions to long-standing problems. If a city center property has historic, cultural, or architectural significance, It's worth preserving to find a solution. And if a project qualifies for tax credits, it's a great first step in creating an economically viable development. So these particular lessons, especially for a young manager like myself, are useful. I'm willing to learn from a manager like Larry, and your smaller brother or sister to the north, Milton, is willing to learn from your successes as a city as well. So for that, I thank you for your efforts, and it is my privilege to present 2 plaques, one for the city manager, Larry Arft, and one for the city of Beloit. Who wants to go first?
Why don't you take the city plaque first, and then I'll accept, and then I'll make a few comments.
All right, Vice President Levy, my pleasure to congratulate you. Larry, congratulations.
Thank you very
Job well
much,
done.
Thank you. Those are beautiful, and, well, Councilor Levy escapes back up to the dais. Falls to my shoulders to make a few quick comments, because we do have a number of guests this evening. Obviously, the reason we won this award was because of the community partnership. This wasn't something the city did unilaterally or the 1 or 2 city officials did. It was done in conjunction. There was a long-standing, interested neighborhood group that was established, formed, and operating. The city then created a separate committee, which was about half city council and half community representatives, and we worked together for those many years and basically just stayed with it till we finally ended up with a solution. And there are a number of people here tonight that were involved in that project from the very early days. You see Wanda back there, and Ken Ware was a leader in the process. And Mrs. Henry is back there, and a number of you. Would all the people that were in the community group please stand up? Emma Harrell is here. There's way too many of you for me to try to get all the names. But, give them a nice round of applause. Francis Vance is also here with this group today, and they worked very, very hard for an incredible amount of time. They actually started before the city got involved. They came to the city and talked us into getting involved in this, and then we worked on it for about 4 years after that. I also should mention, out of respect, there were actually 5 key community residents that were also a part of this group that have since passed away. And we did assemble those names today, and I'm going to read those off because they were also major players in this project. Russell Anderson, Hugo Henry, Florence Mishler, Jesse Melton, and Lulabelle Brown. And all of you saw Lulabelle. She was the very elderly lady who was one of the original Flats residents that cut the ribbon there when we had the ribbon cutting on this project, actually, I guess, earlier this year. And unfortunately, she passed away just a few weeks ago. So those are people that are no longer with us that also participated. And we also have, yeah, give them a quick hand. We also have the pleasure this evening of having the miracle worker, who was the developer that we finally located that knew how to do all this stuff and knew how to make it happen. Gary Gorman. Gary, you want to come up and say a couple things? Yeah, Gary was the guy that knew how to package all of this, and I can't tell you how many developers we took out to this complex, and we would take them through a building, and we'd get that deer in the headlights look, and they'd say, "Don't call us, we'll call you," and we'd never see them again. And when we took Gary and his people out there, they said, "Oh, this has potential. We can do something with this." And those of you who remember the completed project, it was absolutely gorgeous. It literally was a miracle. And I understand all 16 units have now been occupied, so quite an accomplishment. Gary Gorman.
Thanks, Larry. Any project like this takes a very significant and sustained public-private partnership. Our firm has worked with communities for 25 years, trying to accomplish deals that, frankly, most developers are too smart to get involved in. But we enjoy that kind of complex, sophisticated political and financial challenge. But without the backing of the folks back here that created the support from the community, and without the support of the Beloit City Council and of course Larry and Steve, it wouldn't have happened. So we really appreciate this. Hopefully we'll be able to do some more things in Beloit in the future. Thank you.
We hope so. And again, thank you very, very much, Gary, for coming down this evening. With that, I'm going to thank Todd again for taking time out of his busy schedule. We really appreciate your presence here as well. Thank you all very, very much, and thanks again to all the residents for coming out tonight. This was really as much your award as anyone else's. Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is item number 4, public hearings. Tonight we have 4 public hearings. 4A is a proposed ordinance amending the zoning district map for property located at 2030 Porter Avenue from R2 to two-family residential district to M2 General Manufacturing District. This matter has been looked at by the Plan Commission with an approval of 5-0 recommendation. Ms. Christensen, can you give us the staff report, please?
Rod Hilmer, on behalf of Avid Pallet Services, LLC, has applied for the rezoning of the property located at 2030 Porter Avenue from R2 Two-Family Residential District to M2 General Manufacturing District. Avid Pallet currently leases 2030 Porter Avenue and 1401 Eddy Street. Both of those properties were identified on the map that was included in your packet. The property located at 2030 Porter Avenue currently consists of a paved parking lot, which is a conditional use in the R2 zoning districts. However, the applicant would like to be able to use this parking lot for the outdoor storage of trailers associated with Avid Pallet Services. Outdoor storage is prohibited in the R2 zoning district. Up to 25% of the land area property in the M2 zoning district may be used for outdoor storage, provided that the area is screened from view with a solid site-obscuring fence or wall and landscaping. Outdoor storage areas in the M2 district may exceed 25% of the land area if reviewed and approved with a conditional use permit. How this all came about was the Planning Division received a complaint about the use of the property for outdoor storage. Staff met with the applicant to determine an appropriate course of action to allow the applicant to use of the leased property while protecting the neighborhood from an encroaching industrial use. The applicant has applied for this rezoning, and if it is approved, intends to apply for a conditional use permit to allow more than 25% of the property to be used for outdoor storage of trailers. And during that process, planning staff intends, if the zoning is approved, to recommend conditions of approval that may limit the impact of the property's use on the residential neighborhood to the south and west in the town of Beloit. A petition was included in your packet, which was submitted by property owners and residents in the neighborhood surrounding this business. At the Plan Commission meeting, they indicated that trucks start up and operate at all hours of the day and night from about 4 a.m. to midnight. And they did not support the rezoning to M2, but would rather see the lot be a parking lot for cars. They actually asked that it be denied. Plan Commission did hold a public hearing and recommended approval 5-0. We are requesting that you suspend the rules and take action. This is an enforcement action. There's an enforcement action pending on this, and we'd like to just kind of move it along, but it is completely at your discretion what you'd like to do. We're just trying to resolve the situation for the betterment of the neighborhood.
All right, this is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing on a proposed ordinance to amend the zoning district map for property located at 2030 Porter Avenue from R2 two-family residential district to M2 General Manufacturing District. Does anyone wish to appear on that proposed ordinance? Again, does anyone wish to appear on a proposed ordinance amending the zoning district map for property located at 2030 Porter Avenue from R2 to M1? And lastly, does anyone wish to appear on an ordinance amending the zoning district map for property located at 2030 Porter Avenue from R2 to M1? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion first to suspend the rules.
Move to suspend rules.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Ms. Johns and Mr. Noonan. All right, any discussion? All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
All right, Ms. Johns, motion carries 6-1. Is there a motion to approve the underlying 4A zoning district map amendment?
Motion to approve.
All right, Mr. Noonan
Second.
and Mr. Dench. Additional counselor comments? Mr. Levy?
Julie, I have a couple of questions for you. Can you, and maybe I missed it, can you repeat again why what's the objection to this by the people that signed?
Trailers, trucks and trailers, basically a tractor trailer pulling out or dropping off. Essentially, my understanding is that they have carriers that may come in from all parts of the country, and so they may drop a load off anywhere between 4 a.m. and midnight, and they may pick up a load. And the startup of trucks and the operating of the vehicles, just the sound of the trucks, is disturbing to the residents. The residents who spoke were located adjacent to this lot.
And you said there was an enforcement issue pending?
Essentially, if you deny, then we'll be dealing with getting those removed. And if, right now, they have things stored on there that are illegally stored. Generally, while someone is going through a zoning action, we basically halt any enforcement action until the council decides what they're going to do with the zoning action.
Okay, have we ever put in place times that businesses could have trucks start up and stop or transfer things in?
That's done usually through a conditional use permit, and there hasn't been one on this property. We essentially received a complaint that they were storing pallets and trailers there. We contacted the property owner, and the property owner and the business owner have been working with the planning staff since then to try to figure out how to deal with this situation. So since they are a good business in our community, we are trying to figure out solutions to the problem.
Okay, and then one final concern, as I've been talking with people from Head Start, and their biggest concern is, they said right now, I believe the semis or the trucks are coming right down that street, and they're concerned with the amount of traffic that they have first thing in the morning, that we have these semis coming down, and they're just afraid for the kids that's there to be a hazard. Now, is there anything that we can do about that, rerouting the traffic, or I
don't think so. There's not any, every way out of Avid Pallet is on residential streets. And with or without this rezoning, those trucks are going to be somewhere coming to and from Avid Pallet. At one time, Hendricks had looked into, who's the property owner, had looked into trying to get a road or a driveway out to Cranston. And I'm not sure exactly where they're at on that at this point. They did discuss that at Plan Commission.
And just a point of clarification, you said this will alleviate the problem. Can you explain to me?
Well, the pallets are removed, and we're going to ensure that there's screening, and it will come back. If you would approve it, they would ask for the conditional use, and then it would come back forward to you for conditions to try to minimize the outdoor storage on the neighborhood.
Okay, and then finally, in your opinion, is there anything that we could do to satisfy the neighbors short of not approving this?
No, essentially, the business owner has worked with the residents. I'm not sure what the time frame is, and there's, and it was discussed at Plan Commission that short of denying this, their issue is the hours. I mean, if you limited the hours, I think that might appease them somewhat, because hearing a truck start at 4 o'clock in the morning is different from hearing one at 8. But the zoning action doesn't do that. The conditional use could accomplish that. But
and you said if we approve this, they would be applying for a conditional use permit.
Yeah, their intention was to do it the day after you approved it. They were just holding off until they saw what council did with the rezoning.
And then that would be something your department could work with, is saying, here's the concerns from the residents, and I'm sure they're aware of them, to say, here's something that you need to, and we could put that in a conditional use permit.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mr. Dench?
As I'm looking at the map, the property across the street to the east is already zoned M2.
Yes.
And that's where the main operations for this business occur. Yeah, and driving out there to look at it, it seems to me that denying this would not solve the problem of the trucks. The trucks are still coming in.
Yeah.
Because the property to the east is being used for illegal use according to that zoning.
Yes.
So those trucks would still be coming in and out. It's just a matter of whether or not the lot on the west side of the street is permitted to store things that those trucks bring in to the site,
Yeah.
to the
They-
facility
yeah.
on the east side of the street.
Their only other option would be to do it on-site, which would be near the roadway, wouldn't be on that lot, but they would still have trucks coming in and dropping and picking up loads.
Yeah,
It's part of the nature of their business, so.
Right. And again, that's my point, that their main facility is in a site that is properly zoned for that use. And
Yes.
those trucks are free to come and go because of that. I seem to recall, too, since you brought up the idea of access off of Cranston, that the city's strategic plan actually called for the possibility of putting a roadway from Cranston connecting back into this area, did it not?
I'm not sure. I know that we did approve an outlot next to the filling station to allow for another point of access onto Cranston.
At least it was under discussion.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're not in any position to make a decision about new roadways here to solve this problem. But in the future, that could be a possible solution the property owner might consider. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Mr. Forrest?
Thank you. Just some points of clarification to follow up on Councilor Levy's questions. Although the zoning would only impact the ability to store trailers on that site, it does seem to make logical sense that if they can't store trailers on that site, then there won't be trucks coming in and out of that site as frequently to
No.
drop those trailers.
Yeah, it won't come out of this site. It would just still be on the east side of the road.
Right, so we would then help buffer that residential neighborhood.
The
if it
trucks
wasn't
would
that.
still come down the street, but they wouldn't be able to be on that lot.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Christensen, I think one of the points made at the Plan Commission meeting, and maybe you could make it again, was that prior to it being Avid Pallet, its use was what, with Beloit Corporation?
I think it was a foundry.
It was a foundry. So noise is not a new issue in the neighborhood.
And I think for Plan Commission, I think one of the things that was important to them was that this was a growing business, and they felt that that was important to allow businesses to grow. I think that was really what kind of pushed Plan Commission, because they had a discussion with the business owner about job growth and how they're doing as a business, and they are doing well.
Mr. Levy?
Just point of clarification one more time. I understand Councilor Dench's statement that no matter what, the trucks are still going to be permitted to go down. The number one concern here from the people who signed a petition is the noise of the startup trucks at 4 o'clock and odd
Yes.
times of the day. Correct.
Yes.
They're not saying they complain about the trucks coming. They're complaining about the starting up and stopping.
Yes.
Which is what the conditional use will take place. So yeah, I understand the statement that the trucks are still going to come down there, but I just want to be clear that before we go to a vote, that I'm understanding what the petitioner's number one complaint truly is. And if it's the noise, then I'm comfortable with what you said, how we could
It
address
was
that.
the hours of the noise.
Right.
I mean, it was, the one gentleman said it was being woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning with the noise of the tractor starting up. And so it was the noise, the hours in which those trucks were coming and going. I think if they came and went during normal business hours, an 8 to 5 or something, they wouldn't have been as bothered by it. But the 4 a.m. and the midnight were the key ones, which the business owner said is something that's very difficult to control.
Okay. Wait, whoa. Okay. I just want to make sure that as we move forward now, and we discuss the conditional use permit with them if they come forward. I don't want to get down the road and we say, okay, the business owner said that's very difficult to control, so now we can't do it. I really want to walk this line very carefully because I understand what the citizens are saying, and I understand the business aspect, that it's a good business, it's a growing business, and the trucks are going to go down there no matter what. But I want to make sure that we address everything in the conditional use permit and make it as tightly as possible to address the citizens' concerns. That's my number one.
Staff will do that. I mean, I think council's been clear. I mean, we will deal with the hours of operation.
Okay.
And if you approve that, the business will have to live with those hours of operation. I mean,
Okay.
that's what a conditional use permit is.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Ms. DeForest?
So I want to be clear, too, to make sure what the ramifications for this are. Sorry to belabor this.
No, that's right.
But if we deny the zoning request and they can't store trailers there, then there will not be truck traffic on that lot, correct?
No, there will not be truck traffic on that lot.
So that would just nip it right there.
Yeah, there will be truck traffic on the streets, but not on that lot.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any further council questions or comments? All right, I'll go ahead. There is a motion and a second for approval of an ordinance amending the zoning district map for property located at 2030 Porter Avenue from R2 to M2. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, Ms. DeForest and Ms. Johns, is that right? All right, so the motion passes 5-2. Next item for public hearing is 4B. It's a resolution authorizing a planned unit development, PUD master land use plan for property located at 427 and 431 Park Avenue. This matter has been looked at by the Plan Commission with a recommendation for approval 5-0. Ms. Christensen, can you give us the staff report, please?
Kenneth Paulson has applied for approval of a planned unit development master land use plan for the properties located at 427 and 431 Park Avenue. A copy of that master land use plan was included in your packet. The properties are currently zoned C1 Office District, and the applicant is applying for the rezoning to PUD as well, which is the next item on your agenda. He's proposing a 4-unit residential use in the building located at 427 Park Avenue and a 2-family residential use above the existing office use in the building located at 431 Park Avenue. The existing office use will continue to be located in that building. The proposal also includes the combination of the 2 lots into 1 lot, 3 minor building additions to the building located at 427 Park Avenue, which were indicated by, there was a little ADD on the drawing showing where the 3 additions were. And then the exterior rehabilitation of both buildings and the replacement of the existing parking lot behind the building located at 431 Park Avenue. The property at 427 Park Avenue is currently a 2-unit residential structure, and 431 Park Avenue is an office building with no residential units. The existing parking lot behind the building located at 431 Park Avenue contains approximately 11 parking stalls currently. He's proposing the addition of 2 stalls for a total of 13, which will satisfy the off-street parking requirements. And they're proposing a total of 6 dwelling units on 0.39 acres for an overall density of 15.4 units per acre. The maximum density allowed in C1 is 25 units per acre. This went out to all the city's review agents, and there were no comments. Plan Commission held a public hearing and recommended approval subject to the conditions listed in the resolution, and no one from the public attended the public hearing. The conditions are that the allowed uses shall include a multi-family 4-unit residential use in the building located at 427 Park Avenue, a 2-family residential use above an office use in the building located at 431 Park Avenue. Prior to the issuance of a building permit, the lots shall be combined into 1 tax parcel. The maximum residential density will be 15.4 units per acre. The minimum lot area shall be 0.35 acres, and the maximum lot area shall be 0.45 acres. The minimum building setbacks shall be those required in the C1 office district. The maximum building height shall be the height limit in C1 office district. The building coverage limit shall be dictated by the building setbacks, off-street parking requirements, and landscaping requirements. The applicant shall submit a PUD final plan, site plans, and architectural plans for staff review and approval. Successful review of these plans will result in the issuance of a certificate of zoning compliance and architectural review certificate. And in presence of a building permit, the applicant shall pay the current parks improvement impact fee for every additional dwelling unit created. And then the standard, any major conditions and major changes in the adopted conditions will come back through this process. And Plan Commission did recommend approval 4-1.
All right. I'll open the public hearing on 4B, a resolution authorizing a planned unit development master land use plan for property located at 427 and 431 Park Avenue. Does anyone wish to address the council on that issue? If so, please step forward. Does anyone wish to address the council on an issue of a resolution authorizing a planned unit development master land use plan for property located at 427 and 431 Park Avenue? Again, does anyone wish to address the council on a resolution authorizing a planned unit development master land use plan for property located at 427 and 431 Park Avenue. I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion to approve 4B. Is there such a motion?
Move to approve.
All right, Ms. Johns, Mr. Haynes. Additional counselor questions or comments? Mr. Forrest?
Ms. Christensen, could I inquire about why the one plan commissioner objected to recommending approval of this amendment?
The one plan commissioner did not like the idea of breaking the 2-unit structure up any further. She felt it was cobbling up a nice historic house, and she didn't like the idea of doing that to that house.
Was Mr. Paulson available at the plan commission to answer questions?
He was not at the meeting because he was not well, but he did send a representative who answered questions of the plan commissioners.
Do you know if he had tried, because from my understanding he has owned that particular property for a while, has he tried to market that property in its current zoning status and with any success? Or?
I honestly don't know.
Thank you.
Mr. Noonan?
Thank you. Question, Ms. Christensen. In the packet, there are 2 architectural drawings. Are both of those for 427 indicated, or one for 427 and one for 430?
One is 427, the west elevation, and the other one is 427, the north elevation.
And so we would be adding, we would be going from 2 residential units, 2 apartments to 6 apartments under the 2 parcels. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's what I'm understanding. And so one of our criteria is reducing density in the city, and I was wondering in what way that reached that threshold.
We don't actually have a goal of reducing density in the city. We have a goal of reducing density in our single-family neighborhoods. There is an expectation that you are going to have multifamily residential somewhere in your community. If you recall, when the last multifamily proposal came forward, one of the things that they didn't meet was being located on an arterial street. You had to go through a residential neighborhood to get there. This is on Park Avenue. It is an arterial street. It is located, another concern was location, proximity to parks. It's located across the street from a park. It is an area of our town that has greater density. We would rather see the density there than in the College Park neighborhood that's nearby. There isn't a lot of single family right in this particular area of the town, of the city, and so this we felt was the appropriate area for density. And the C1 zoning classification actually allows the multifamily with a conditional use permit. So this isn't a single family area that we're upzoning to allow greater density.
Thank you. One last question. Is this a new acquisition, this property, or is Mr. Poles known this forever?
He has owned 427. He is acquiring 431. And he owns 423.
It's been fun watching the progress in those 2 parcels.
I would have a question, Ms. Christensen, in terms of the process, and my memory is not accurate perhaps, but don't we, when we look at these, don't we many times look at the zoning change first and then approve the PUD? The flip-flopping C and B on our order, or is it the other way around?
No, because if you're really looking at the plan itself to see if you approve of the plan, and then if you approve of the plan, then you look at the zoning, because you wouldn't want to approve the zoning unless you like the plan, because the PUD mechanism is set up that if you rezone it to PUD, all that can develop is what's on this plan. So if he came in with some other way to do 6 units, he can't do that. He's got to do what you've approved on this plan. And so you're really approving a plan, not just a broad-based rezoning.
So this is the method of restricting the PUD concept?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it gives neighbors some guarantee that, I mean, if there's any change in this, it comes back through the public process and they get re-notified. So you're really buying into a plan and a concept, not just a broad R3 zoning or something like that.
All right. Mr. Forrest, I think you were next.
That actually answers my question.
Mr. Noonan, you had another question?
No.
All right. All right. I believe there's been a motion and a second. There's something further? All right.
Sorry. I just want to make sure I understand. There were no concerns expressed by residents after being noticed?
None of the residents came to the meeting or called.
Okay, thank you.
All right. There has been a motion and a second. Any further councilor comments or discussion? I'll go ahead and call the question. All in favor of 4B, please signify by aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
All right, the motion carries 6-1. 4C is a proposed ordinance amending the zoning district map for properties located at 427 and 431 Park Avenue from C1 Office District to PUD Planned Unit Development District. This is before the council for first reading. There is a recommendation from the Plan Committee, or Plan Council Commission, rather, for approval 4-1. Ms. Christensen?
This is the zoning step to the PUD. If approved, the zoning would be changed from C1 office to PUD planned unit development. If approved, there would still be additional staff review of the site plans and architectural drawings. Plan Commission held a public hearing, recommended approval 4-1, and the applicant's representative called and requested that you suspend the rules and take action on the rezoning tonight.
All right. This is a public hearing on 4C. I will open the public hearing on a proposed ordinance amending the zoning district map for properties located at 427 and 431 Park Avenue from C1 Office District to PUD Planned Unit Development District. Does anyone wish to appear and speak on that issue? Does anyone wish to speak on the issue of a proposed ordinance amending the zoning district map for properties located at 427 and 431 Park Avenue from C1 Office District PUD to PUD Planned Unit Development? And lastly, does anyone wish to appear on an ordinance amending the zoning district map for properties located at 427 and 431 Park Avenue from C1 Office District to PUD Planned Unit Development? I'll close the public hearing on 4C and entertain a motion to approve the same. Mr. Levy. Oh, thank you. Thank you. The first motion would be to suspend the rules. Mr. Levy, you still want to make that one?
Sure.
All right. And Ms. Johns, you still want to second it? I'll second that. All right. Additional counselor discussion or questions? And all in favor signify by aye. Aye. Those opposed? Very well. Motion carries 7-0. Is there a motion to approve 4C?
Move to approve.
All right. Mr. Haynes? Second. And Ms. Johns. Any further counselor comments or discussion? All right. I'll call the question. All in favor signify by aye. 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 Those opposed?
Nay.
All right. Motion carries 6-1. 4C is a public hearing, 4D is a public hearing on a progress report from Community Development Block Grant Emergency Assistant Program. Mr. Bonds, can you give us the staff report, please, sir?
Sure. Earlier this year, the City of Beloit applied for a block grant in order to get emergency assistance funds to repair some of the damage caused by the flooding of last year. And the project included the reconstruction of Sherland Avenue to raise it up out of the flood area, and also to rip-wrap the bank along the east side of the Rock River, basically from the dam down to the Grand Avenue Bridge, or to right behind the Cafe Barrel or the Beloit Inn. The purpose of this update tonight, then, is to give the community an update of where the project stands to date. To date, this last summer, we were able to rebuild Sherland Avenue, raise the elevation of Sherland Avenue up so that it would have to exceed last year, or that 2007 flooding event, by probably another foot to get it up high enough to go over and block the road again like it did previous time. And it will surely relieve our west side residents as well as the city of South Beloit, because that's the main access to the west side on the southern part of the city. So hopefully we do not ever see a flood that goes a foot higher than what the previous did, because we're going to have a lot more problems elsewhere in the city if we do. But if we do, Sherland Avenue will be dry. You will be able to get across the river. The other part of that is the rip-wrapping along the east side of the Rock River. That is being designed and being submitted to the DNR for permit approval, with the intent to construct that next construction season next summer. So that's the update to where we're at with this grant application, and certainly be willing to address any questions the council may have or the community.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Botts. This is a public hearing. Does anyone wish to speak on the progress report on the Community Development Block Grant Emergency Assistance Program? If so, please step forward. Again, anyone wish to talk about the Community Development Block Grant Emergency Assistance Program? And lastly, does anyone wish to appear and speak on the progress report on the Community Development Block Grant Emergency Assistance Program? I'll close the public hearing. I don't believe there's any action necessary. Simply the report is all we're doing tonight. Thank you. Item number 5 is a citizens' participation. This is an opportunity for individuals to address the council on issues that will either come before us this evening or may in the future come before us. If you wish to address us, please step forward, give us your name and address. I would ask that you limit any remarks to approximately 3 minutes, and while I'll try and not be rude and interrupt you in the middle of that 3-minute point, I would ask that you try and not be repetitive and finish within that time length. Does anyone wish to appear and speak citizens' participation? Very well, I'll close citizens' participation and move to item number 6. This evening, item number 6 is the consent agenda. It consists of items A through F. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business considered at this point on the agenda. First of all, do any councilors wish an item removed from the consent agenda? Ms. DeForest?
I'd like to request that item F, as in Frank, be removed from the consent agenda.
F, all right. Anyone else? All right, the consent agenda now consists of items A through E. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve 6A through E.
Second.
All right, Mr. Noonan, Ms. Johns, all in favor signify by aye. Aye. Those opposed? Very well. Motion carries 7-0. 6F is a resolution approving the contract between the City of Beloit and the Rock County Humane Society. Mr. Casper, can you fill us in on the staff report, please, sir?
Yes, sir. This would be an additional one-year contract between the city and the Humane Society. It is at the same rate, monetary rate, as the current contract that's just now coming to an end in the end of the month. I guess I don't want to just repeat and reread what's in the staff report. I have worked with Humane for a number of years, particularly when I was doing municipal court as the assistant city attorney. Found their services invaluable in the probably surprising number of animal cases that come into the city, both to the police and eventually some into the court system. Yeah, I would be happy to answer questions if there are any.
Ms. DeForest, do you have any additional questions or comment?
I'd like to know if there's evaluation of the performance of the Humane Society in terms of, I've heard some resident concerns about animal treatment that are taken into shelter at the Humane Society. Do we do anything in terms of evaluation or to follow up regarding their contractual performance?
I don't know if new Chief Jacobs cares to comment on it. It's typically overseen by the police department, but I can tell you from personal experience, I mean, again, when I was the assistant in handling these cases, I somewhat routinely got up to the Humane Society. I've been through the facilities. I have not heard complaints of that nature, and they wouldn't seem consistent with the things I observed up there, or the staff that I've talked to seem to have a very deep interest in the welfare of all the animals, whether it's the more common dogs and cats, or the much more exotic wolf hybrids, Arctic foxes, 12-foot boas. We run into some interesting animals.
So if I could follow up, do we have any formal reporting that's required, and have there been any official or formal complaints filed against the Humane Society? I mean, just to follow up with my particular question, I mean, I appreciate your anecdotal experience, but I just want to make sure.
My office has never received a complaint about their services. Again, I don't know if Chief Jacobs wishes to comment.
I can verify that the police department has not received any complaints about the service. The officers on the street are very satisfied with the services that we receive. Now, I'm not aware of any complaints that are made directly to the society.
Okay.
And as far as performance evaluations, it seems to me that when they send us the bill for our contract, they include the number of pickups that they've done each year, and then we can compare that. And that's generally how we're billed, by the number of pickups or the number of times they're on call or the number of special assignments that they've had in the community.
Okay.
So that would be their performance.
All right, thank you.
All right, is there a motion to approve 6F?
Can I make a motion to approve 6F with a request that we receive a report from a representative from the Humane Society about their performance?
In addition to the documentation provided to the police, what do you want in the report?
I guess I could firm that up with maybe Chief Jacobs later. A report about how their performance is and how animals are housed, or I'm not really sure how to frame it at this point. We frequently as a body ask representatives from organizations to come to report to us and give us status reports. That's what I'm asking for.
All right, I'm not certain if that's all in one motion or what, but the motion has been made, such as it is. Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
All right, further discussion. Mr. Levy.
Just a point of clarification. I think if we're contracting with the Humane Society, that your report may better be served coming from the police department, because that's who works hand in hand with the Humane Society. That maybe you can get with Chief Jacobs and let him know what your concerns are, and he can ask them to present a report to him, the police department, based on that information, and then he could bring it forward. That would be my recommendation. But I guess I also want to be clear on, is that an addendum to the motion, and do we have to do anything any different, or can we just add it to what's already published?
Adding the fact that you want the police department to work on the report?
Right. I guess I just want to be clear that it's
I
okay.
could make this easy. I will retract my motion and make a motion to approve and just request that a report will be made. How about that?
That, I think, would be a better way to proceed.
All right.
Ms. Johns, you, or Mr. Noonan, rather, do you go along with that change in it?
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
So we're clear, we're simply voting on 6F, approving the contract with the request from the police department that they report to us on the efficacy of the Humane Society's efforts.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, all in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Very well, motion carries 7-0. 7A is a proposed ordinance to create section 15.11 of the Code of General Ordinances for the City of Beloit relating to regulating hotels, motels, inns, and other transient lodging facilities. This is before the council for a second reading. Ms. Krieger?
Again, we're here for the second reading. The ordinance itself mimics the state law, which requires the hotels to have a registration and to keep those records for a year. We would be requiring the same thing here in Beloit. In addition, they are to provide that information to law enforcement upon request. The ordinance also provides a punishment, I guess, for failing to do, having the register, and then also for providing false information on the register. With that, I'll take any questions. Our Officer Arnold is here for questions if you have any questions of him.
All right, is there a motion to approve 7A?
Motion to approve.
Mr. Noonan, rather, Ms. DeForest. Any further council questions or discussion? Ms. DeForest?
I actually raised this question when the issue was first brought before us at our last meeting. So there is a state-defined penalty. How will we go about enforcing that?
Well, this ordinance makes it a local issue. So if we have a violation of this ordinance, it would come through municipal court as if any other ordinance violation.
All right, thank you.
Any additional councilor comments or questions? All right, I'll call the question. All in favor of 7A signify by aye. Aye. Those opposed? Very well, motion carries 7-0. 7B is a proposed ordinance to establish no parking regulations on Grant Street. Before the council for a first reading with a request that we suspend the rules and proceed to a second reading. The matter has been looked at by the Traffic Review Commission with a recommendation for approval 5-0. Mr. Bonds?
The Engineering Division received a request from the Fire Department to restrict parking on the west side of Grant Street in order to accommodate the movement of their vehicles off of Grant Street into the driveway into the fire station facility on McKinley. The notices were sent out to the adjacent properties that this would impact, and were asked to respond to the engineering department by December 1st. As of that date, 2 responses from the neighbors were received, and both were in favor of removing the parking in that area. With that, we'd ask the council to support this recommendation by the Traffic Review Committee to remove parking on that portion of Grant Street.
All right, the first issue is there a motion to suspend the rules and proceed to action on the merits this evening?
So moved.
Second. Mr. Levy, Mr. Haynes. Counselor, questions or discussion? And all in favor signify by aye. Aye. Those opposed? Very well, motion carries 7-0. Is there a motion to approve, excuse me, 7B?
Move to approve.
Ms. DeForest and Mr. Haynes, any additional counselor questions or comments? All right, all in favor signify by aye. Aye. Those opposed? Very well, motion carries 7-0. 7C is a proposed ordinance to establish no parking regulations on Hemlock Street. This is before the council for a first reading with a request to suspend the rules and to take action on the merits at a second reading. The Traffic Review Committee has made a recommendation for approval 5-0. Mr. Bonds?
This request came from the First Community Credit Union, asking that traffic or the parking be removed on east side of Hemlock between their driveway and the newly constructed Eclipse Boulevard. In that area, it's difficult for cars that are going in and out of the credit union's new driveway onto Hemlock, and difficult to see if cars are coming from the other direction, so they asked that removal. This also was asked of the adjacent properties, their concern over removing that parking. There are no residences on the east side there now that credit union purchased all those properties in this adjacent area. There is parking allowed on the west side of the street in front of the current properties. There were no people who commented about the removal of parking, no objections to it. And so with that, we'd ask the council to consider this action and remove the parking on the east side of Hemlock from Eclipse Boulevard up to the First Credit Union driveway entrance.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bonds. Is there a motion to suspend the rules and proceed to action on the merits?
I move that we suspend the rules.
Mr. Dench?
Second.
And Ms. Johns. Councilor, questions or comments? I'll call the question. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Very well, motion carries 7-0. Is there a motion to approve 7C?
Move to approve.
All right, Mr. Haynes?
Second.
And Ms. Johns. All right, any councilor comments or questions? All right, all in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Very well, motion carries 7-0. Item number 8 is appointments. This evening we have a number of recommendations that are brought forward to you by your Appointment Review Committee, which met on the 14th of December. The appointment, oops, I just switched past it here on the computer. The Appointment Review Committee recommends the appointment of Dwayne Amers and Louise Reidenbach, both of whom are incumbents, to terms expiring December 31st, 2012. To the Board of Ethics, make a recommendation of appointment of an incumbent, Mary Kay Beester, to a term expiring on December 31st, 2012. To the Appointment Review Committee, the recommendation is that the incumbent, Thomas A. Jasson, be appointed to a term expiring December 31st, 2014. The Community Development Authority, the recommendation is that incumbent Stephanie J. Jacobs be appointed to a term expiring December 31st, 2013. To the Equal Opportunities and Human Relations Commission, the recommendation is that a Catherine Ingram be appointed to a term expiring on the 30th of June of 2011. To the Landmarks Commission, recommendation is that incumbents Lynette Johnson and Marjorie Fizell both be appointed to terms expiring on the 31st of October of 2012. That's the recommendations, or those are the recommendations from the Appointment Review Committee. Is there a motion to approve the recommendations?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Levy, Mr. Noonan. Councilor, questions or discussion? All right, all in favor signify by aye. Aye. Those opposed? Very well, motion carries 7-0. I would like to announce that there are a number of vacancies on various boards and commissions. The Appointment Review Committee has one vacancy. The Board of Appeals has a vacancy for a second alternate. The Board of Ethics has two vacancies for residents. The Board of Review has two vacancies as alternates for residents. The Cable Television Advisory Committee has two vacancies for residents. Disabled Parking Enforcement Assistance Council, three vacancies for residents. The Equal Opportunities and Human Relations Commission has a vacancy for a resident. The Municipal Golf Committee has a vacancy for a youth member as well as a vacancy for a resident. And the Parks and Recreation Conservation and Advisory Committee has a vacancy for a youth representative. If any of you have interest in those positions, please contact the city manager's office, or applications of interest can be gotten from the city clerk's office. Item number 9 is councilor activities and upcoming events. Ms. DeForest, could you start us off this evening, please? And Mr. Dench.
I have nothing, sir.
Mr. Levy.
I'm lost here. Councilor DeForest says she has nothing. I'm like shocked here. Oh. Anyway, I would like. That's okay. I would like to congratulate Norm Jacobs on his new position as chief. I wish him all the luck, and I'm sure he'll do a great job. He has a great staff working for him, and I think his efforts to continue to move the city forward, I think, is going to be very great, and then just congratulations to you.
Mr. Haynes?
Nothing.
Ms. Johns?
Thank you, Mr. President. I will also extend congratulations to Chief Jacobs. Glad that things worked out that way. Also want to congratulate and thank the Fairbanks Flats Committee on their part in earning the Neighborhood Partnership Award. Obviously, that was a long, long road, but they stuck with it and got what they wanted. So congratulations to them. Also want to just wish everyone happy holidays and shop and dine local.
Mr. Noonan?
Yeah, thank you. In addition, I would just like to hope that everyone is having a very safe holiday season and continue everyone to share the cheer with your neighbors. Thank you.
All right, and I also would join our fellow councilors in wishing everyone a good holiday season, Merry Christmas, and however you celebrate safely. We've gotten through one big winter storm. Apparently another one may be coming. So get out your shovels and have a little bit of tolerance for yourself, your neighbors, and your sidewalks and streets and driveways. I think the explanation for the brevity of our comments this evening is that it's the winter solstice, and it's the shortest daylight day of the year, and we all have nothing to say. So with that, we'll move on. City's manager's presentation, we're going to learn about the Emerald Ash Borer tonight. Mr. Bonds?
The emerald ash borer is a small little green thing that eats trees and kills them. It affects the ash trees, and the city is probably have had some visitors already. It takes about a 5-year for a gestation period for these things to really take effect. And what it ended up doing, it'll end up killing all the ash trees in the community, which will have a big issue. It's kind of like how when the elm trees were all died off, it'll have a similar effect where we'll end up taking down all the ash trees in the city's terraces, as well as the community will have to find, and I'll have Bruce will probably go into more detail about this, but the DNR will quarantine the county once they are found in Rock County, which means no wood of these types will be able to leave the county. We'll be responsible for establishing a marshaling yard, which everybody will be able to bring that wood to. It'll have to be disposed of properly. Typically, it's chipped up into really small pieces or ground up and disposed of, but it can't be just taken out of the county and used as firewood somewhere else. That's how it got here. Bruce has some information that shows the evolution of how this thing is moving into the area. It basically decimated Michigan's forestry. they had to take down a lot of trees throughout the whole state of Michigan. But this will have a big effect on us, and we'll have to deal with it sooner or later. We'll see this thing coming, and we just wanted to kind of give the community a little update on what we're looking to expect. And if you need help for this, you dial 364-2929 and ask for Mr. Sadowski. And with that, I'll introduce Bruce Sadowski to you as our direct terror supervisor. And our city forester has been actively working with the state's DNR on this issue.
Got a couple handouts for you to kind of look at. First off, it's got the entry hole for the EAV, Emerald Ash Borer. And I also have a sample of the bug itself. So you can see I've gone to a number of sites looking at these bugs. And nobody really knows what it really looks like, so when you get calls, I've gone out to sites for locusts and a number of other insects, and they are very small. So to start this out, Dave took all my good stuff. Okay, which one are you working?
You got show and tell. So. You
Yeah,
have show and tell.
I got show and tell. There we go.
It's the grub.
Yep, I got it. I stole the wife's computer. Outline basically real quick. I know I have to talk fast because they said I get carried away with this kind of stuff. So I took out like 18 slides, so we're good. What does it look like? What have we learned? And what are we doing? Okay, this is the Emerald Ash Borer, and you can actually see up in the corner there, sitting on the penny, and it's coming around there. It's a very small insect, and you're thinking, what can it really do? And I guess to start it off, the closest thing I can really compare it to is a Dutch elm disease. But it's an ash tree. It's all the ash trees. So you've got your bugs, and we've got the larva, and I also have a larva there for you to look at as well. Right now, it's in a pupa state right now, so nothing is moving where it's at right now. It's not in Beloit that we know of. But so it's not moving anywhere. In May, that's when the bug emerges and starts going around, getting into other trees, and lays its eggs in June, September, and then. But this larva, I mean, takes 1 to 2 years to develop. But like I say, you'll see on the bark, on the back of the bark, on the way that it's quite similar to Dutch elm, as in the galleries that goes through there, but yet a little different. What we'll find is, because I say we will find because we know it'll be here, branch dieback. You'll see that where it starts to die back, the epichromic sprouting that pops up. Now that can be caused by a number of other things as well. But when we see that on an ash tree, that's when we got to really start getting out and looking, and we have had them on some ash trees. The bark begins to crack. You can see the S-shaped galleries inside. Woodpeckers. Woodpeckers are one of our biggest storytellers, as in if you have that larva or the bug inside, the woodpecker can sense it and it's going in there for food. So you'll have a lot of woodpecker activity, and then there's a D-shaped hole. Now, this is a really strange one that it's a nice, clean D shape, and normally you have to scrape it a little bit to actually see if it's a D shape. So that's one of the things we go through. But here's some of the false ones that we get. Honey locust borer. I haven't seen any of these around here. Tiger beetle I saw up north. This flat-headed apple tree borer, we had that on Collingswood. Just destroyed the ash tree. A quite young one just like that as well. And the ash bark beetle. Now we've had the ash bark beetle for about 5 years. And that's why we've lost a lot of our ash already. What's the history? In 1990 they found it in Michigan, didn't know what it was. So they went through the whole thing, finally got APHIS and DADCAP and DNR involved, found out, made a positive identification in 2002, and then they were already in the whole destruction of the state at that point in time. 15 to 20 million ash trees died or dying in the state of Michigan, primarily because of solid wood packing materials in the late 80s and 90s. They figured that's where it come from. And many of the trees were cut down and used for firewood, contributed to the spread. Now, one of the things I did learn was and I haven't figured out how they do this yet. They found that the bug had started in Indiana, where they were making the bats and axe handles. The ash were in there, shipped from the east, and they took the wood chips and sent them to Michigan, and then it just took off from there. Now, how they can decide, they don't have zip codes on them, but how they decided that's where they came from, that was kind of interesting. They actually come from Mideast here, Mongolia and China and Korea, Taiwan, and through our packing materials, came to the United States. This is January 5th, 2009. Okay, we had our little place up there where we found that EAB. I had taken my crew down to Illinois here. We went down on 2 different occasions, so we were able to identify it when it comes to Wisconsin. So they just had a small spot there. Why do we keep talking about it? And I do talk about it a lot. You can ask people. Here we are in September, okay? I'll go back. Whoop. Okay, we had 1 spot in Ozaukee County. In a matter of 7 months, we've got all these counties quarantined. They're moving fast. We're on the state line, and the DNR and DADCAP all say, I don't know how you don't have it yet. Trucks go through fast, I don't know. Okay, Toledo, Ohio, 300,000 population. So you got 8,000 trees. They're estimating $5 to $6 million for removal. Milwaukee is scared to death. I've talked to the foresters over there. They're doing all kinds of injections right now trying to save their ash trees. Eau Claire's got 12,000 ash trees. Sparta has 1,900. We have 2,101 ash trees. And that's in our parks, cemeteries, and right-of-way, ROW, or terrace. So when we find it, what are we going to do with all the logs and chips? That's one of the big dilemmas. I'm on the DADCAP Wood Utilization Committee, and this is a dilemma all across the state. First off, we have now, I just finished our management plan and shared it with Dave, and we're trying to figure out what is the best and cost-effective way to deal with it when it comes. This is one option that some people are using up north, but it's $400,000 nobody has right now. 4 employees, year-round. Mulch sits for 1 year, and you can sell it for homeowners or landscapers. You know, do your excuse me, colored mulch. That's really becoming popular now. That's one way, and you get some money back, but it's nowhere close to offsetting what the cost is. So what we've come up with here so far is marshalling yard, like David talked about. Okay, we've got right up in top here in the blue, that's the Copland Farm, the old Copland Farm. It's a secured site, away from everything. Nobody can get in there. If we have to put a secured site for the wood, and that's what you do have to do, it would be a place to store the wood for a couple of years, and then we can make it into firewood and give it away or sell it. The other place would be, an alternative spot would be the wastewater pollution facility back over in this big field. So Wisconsin's first find in Ozaukee County, like I said, and it was August 1st of 08, APHIS confirmed. What happened is, a guy, he owns a farm back in here, and he called the DNR and said, something's wrong with my trees, come check my trees. And that's these right here, the ash trees here. And when they got out there, they found it just across the county in Washington County. They figure it's 3 years that it had been in there, that he'd found it. Don't have any source on why it got there, because there's no park, there's no waterway real close to him. So they weren't really sure on how it even got there. So they made the public announcement on August 4th. So they had 2 detections they found right away. This is the first one right here where you saw the tree. Then they found another one downtown further. In about 6 weeks, this is the Fox River right here. All the ash trees along there are infested. I'm just full of good news, aren't I? Okay, here, when we went to Ozaukee County, we went and we looked at these here trees. This is where we took some pictures. You can see how this is a weird-looking ash tree. They just get all deformed. Some of the larvae that were in the tree that we were able to find, the D shape again, and there's galleries and splitting bark. The fire department is actually right back over here on the right. All the trees, and this is just one little section, but every tree along the edge of this river was an ash. And every tree along that river it's in a park adjacent to the fire department, every one of them had EAB. So when it gets found in Beloit, what are we going to do? Well, first off, we have to call DNR. They're going to come in and they're going to verify if it's EAB or not. They actually send the bug to Michigan or the tree, whatever, and they get it verified. It takes about a day, so it's not real, or they are very timely about it. There's a response plan that's part of the plan that we've made up on how we're going to deal with it, and they will work also with us and their own plan. A survey is conducted of the whole area to see what's where it's all spread out at, and then they begin taking action. This is in Ozaukee County. It's actually in the back of the fire department, like I showed you earlier. The APHIS, DNR, and DADCAP set up an incident command, and then they have us come in as well. We have representatives in there, but they start out the show on their own. So the quarantine, like Dave talked about, what does a quarantine mean? You can't move any hardwood out of the county. And they say all hardwood, just so that way we won't have any slip through. But the only people that can do that is DADCAP and APHIS, or Department of Agriculture, Trade and Consumer Protection, and Animal and Plant and Health Inspection Services. They are the only two people that can do that, and when they do that, they do counties at a time, and they determine how bad it is. And APHIS will do, like, if they do like they did in Illinois, they quarantine the whole state. Actually, the whole state of Illinois is under a quarantine right now. 3/4 of the upper state has got EAB. Chicago's really bad. Okay, what they will do is they'll come in, government to government. Okay, they'll sit down with us, have meetings with us, fill everyone in on how it's looking and stuff. Set up public meetings, and we'll do press releases, and they're really, really good with stuff like that. The urban forestry grants, we were lucky enough to receive an urban forestry grant, and that's why we know exactly how many trees we have, or ash trees we have, in the terrace in our parks and cemeteries. Because now we've already started proactively removing some of the trees that are under stress. And we do have a lot of trees, or ash trees, that are under stress right now. So we're trying to be proactive, get rid of those, because that's the first ones that the EAB will go after anyhow. They're the ones that are under stress. Any future grants? Pretty unlikely from DNR. As everybody knows, they're getting broke as well. So this is, I did using the Purdue University formula for tree removal because of the EAB. They come up with this big, nice formula. Worst case scenario, and this is all for farming out or contracting out. It's going to be a lot cheaper for us because we're going to do it in-house. But 2,100 trees, you can see how it's going to cost to remove the trees and stump, $895,000, replanting another $735,000, total cost $1.6 million. Now that doesn't include anything that's on private property, but that's the worst case scenario. So we've been proactive enough that hopefully, or we're trying to be proactive enough so we can get rid of the bad stuff before they come in. There are a few specimens of ash that, excuse me, and very few that EAB does not like, and well, hopefully we'll be doing good in that regard. So I try to go through it real fast. If I did, okay, any questions?
Mr. Haynes.
Yes, Bruce. So what specific species and genuses are hosts for the emerald ash borer? Most ashes are members of genus Fraxinus.
Right, and that's what...
But there are some that are called ashes that are members of Sorbus.
Right, it's Fraxinus.
Okay.
Sorbus are not. Mm-hmm. So that's where we're, and most, or about 80% of ours are Fraxinus. Mm-hmm. The green ash, we've got them all over. So that's what we're going to be dealing with. And actually, we've probably removed close to, well, it was before this survey, we probably removed about 100 of them the year before. So We remove about 900 trees a year.
So people
Almost
with
1,000.
with mountain ashes, which are genus sorbus, don't have to worry about anything.
Correct.
What are you going to replace the ashes with?
Well, we haven't planted any ash now for 5, 6 years. I've been putting different species of maples. There's some new hybrid elms out there that are really nice. Now there is actually another new hybrid elm that is more upright growing, more conducive to smaller terraces that we have. And we're playing with a lot of different species. Kentucky coffees. Some people don't like them. They're nice. They just take a long time to grow. Once they get filled out, they look nice. They just look kind of ugly getting there. Kind of drawing a blank. We've got like 8 different types that we're putting in right now this year.
Mr. Forst?
So thank you, Bruce, for your proactive approach and having the management plan already in place. So to bottom line it, I know you said it would cost us less in-house because we'll take the trees down ourselves. So are we looking at like $500,000 if we were to lose all of our ash trees to have to take those down approximately? I mean, so I'm just trying to figure out, you know, in the future, what are we looking at in terms of bottom line cost? If we get hit, we're going to end up having to take down our
Right.
trees, and that's going to be about $500,000.
Well, what we're doing is we're actually fitting it into our program that we have now.
Okay.
For the removals and planting and trimming. And as we're in the area and we get upon a ash that's under stress, we remove it right away. So that way we're reducing that number all the time.
Okay.
I figure it's going to take 5 years. Okay, it's not going to, like I said, we're knocking on wood, bug's not here yet, or at least we haven't found it. But in the 5-year plan, the way these trees are declining, we only have 20% of our ash are nice right now, of the Fraxinus. So by the time we get to the other end, because of the ash beetle, I don't think we're going to have a whole lot left.
Okay.
So we're hoping.
So we're gradually taking them out, so it's not
Yep,
going to be
it's
this big cost, one-time cost that we're going to
Right. We're trying to do it as a nice smooth, and that way we can remove some of the ash trees and plant some new trees right away.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Additional councilor questions or comments? All right, thank you. Item number 11 is reports from boards and city officers. 11A is a resolution declaring doubtful accounts and authorizing amounts to be written off for Riverfest Festivals, Inc. support invoices. Mr. Arft?
Thank you, Mr. President. This resolution was placed on the agenda to write off accumulated debt from Riverfest Festivals Incorporated. As you know, this not-for-profit corporation sponsors and has put on the Riverfest Summer Rock Festival for a number of years. We had debts on the books from the 08 program totaling about $4,991, and from the 09 program support services totaling $5,000. And these were the amounts that Riverfest was to pay the city under the letter of agreement that we had with them, and the rest of our services would be considered a sponsorship. As you know, they've come on extremely hard times. They've come off of 2 very, very difficult years. They are in the hole. They've lost a lot of money, and the corporation has been taking a number of steps to try and address that deficit. First of all, they've canceled Riverfest for 2010, and likely we have seen the last Riverfest Rock Festival. The corporation is planning on running a smaller community-based festival with mostly regional entertainment. They have a number of people that have agreed to perform for free, so that hopefully they can make this thing work economically. And that will, right now, is scheduled for the second weekend in July, using the same date that they used for Riverfest. We're recommending that this amount be written off. We don't think it's collectible, certainly not collectible anywhere in the foreseeable future. The corporation has made an effort. They have been doing some in-kind services. They're doing some fundraisers, and they're trying to pay off the accumulated debt, and they do owe a lot of money yet to some outside vendors and outside service providers that they really need to try and get paid off. It's going to have some reflection on the community's reputation. So our recommendation is that the amounts be written off. If there are any further questions or comments, I'll be happy to answer them.
All right, thank you, Mr. Arft. Is there a motion to approve 11A?
I'd move that we approve 11A.
Mr. Dench, is there a second? I'll second the motion. Further council discussion or questions? Mr. Noonan?
Thank you, Mr. President. Since the Riverfest won't continue in its previous form, I'm going to change some of my remarks, but this is a great opportunity to talk about the future then of whatever this organization takes on. Riverfest did a great service to the city. When it first started, Beloit Corporation was still one of the world's leaders in paper making. No one ever thought that would go away. The old Portland Avenue Bridge was still there. People came down Woodward instead of White Avenue. Tommy's Liquor was still on the other side of the street. Goodies was still down there, and many other things. The mall had just converted from a plaza to a mall, and we all missed the little Santa Hut this week. It really did a great job in propelling the city forward and showing off our riverfront. And it was very progressive, and very proud of all those people that 25 years ago, Nancy Forbeck and others, that saw that. In the last few years, as it hit hard times, though, it really it transformed itself, and it really alienated many people throughout the community and very upset them, and rightfully so. And so I hope, as this new organization puts itself forward, that it makes sure that it's more inclusive, and hopefully it tries to look at a component that was so brilliant in the original plan, which was that it gave not-for-profits an opportunity, a greater opportunity to actually make profits. It was one of the number one profit centers for so many not-for-profits throughout our community. So that's my suggestion and hope in its future. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Levy?
I was just going to say, when we call for the vote, I would like to have a roll call vote, please.
All right, that's fine. Ms. DeForest?
I would like to express that this festival has been financially distressed before, and has been bailed out and debts collected, written off before, with predecessors of ours expressing concern that things are changed and that we don't continue to help float this event. And it feels particularly difficult to do that given previous comments with little change. I'm glad to see there will be changes for the next year, but it seems hard to me to reconcile writing off this debt when we've asked sacrifices from our employees and our residents. I'm just having a really difficult time floating this boat again. Thank you.
All right, I certainly would agree it's a difficult choice to make. However, the potential for recovery is about zero. And it's going to be about zero a year from now, or 2 years from now, or however many years from now. It seems to me that the city's commitment to the festival is over, and the question is whether we clean this up now or whether we postpone cleaning it up for a year or 2 or 3. The recovery of the money is not really a viable option, and whether we take a swallow of castor oil and do this now, or we put it off and take a swallow of castor oil a year from now or 2 years from now, some council sometime is going to swallow the castor oil. Are additional councilor comments or questions? Mr. Noonan?
Thank you. Just one more question. Part of the structure previously was that the executive director's compensation package was covered by Beloit in order to help it succeed. Is that still in effect, or is that null and void now, and they're totally on their own?
No, they've been on their own for a number of years. In fact, the executive director has been under contract with Riverfest for the last at least 2 years. They haven't even had a full-time employee. He was working on a contract basis. So no, they haven't covered that salary in some time. They've been providing a grant to Riverfest every year, which is used for this and other operating purposes to help cover the cost of the festival, but not paying the salary.
Thank you.
Additional councilor questions or comments? All right, I'll call the vote. Mr. Levy has asked for a roll call, and I think that's appropriate. Ms. Alexander?
Counselor DeForest? Nay.
Counselor Dench?
Nay.
Counselor Levy?
Nay.
Counselor Van Bogart?
Aye.
Counselor Haynes?
Nay.
Counselor Johns?
Abstain.
Counselor Noonan?
Nay.
All right.
5 nays, 1 yea, 1 abstention.
All right, the motion fails. Item 11B is a resolution approving lease agreement between the City of Beloit and the Beloit Professional Baseball Association, Inc. Mr. Casper?
Thank you, sir. The Beloit Professional Baseball Association is what we commonly refer to as the Snappers. The lease agreement attached to the packet, which I would, as an aside note, has already been signed and approved by the board of that organization, is the same agreement that's existed for some substantial period of time. It goes back, as far as I remember, the last 3 years we've been operating under the same agreement financially and in terms of other duties and responsibilities. I, again, don't want to read verbatim the staff report, and maybe I'd best serve you by deferring to any questions you have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Casper. We'll get to some questions perhaps in a moment. Is there a motion to approve 11B?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Mr. Noonan and Mr. Haynes. Additional counselor questions of Mr. Casper or discussion? Ms. Johns?
Thank you. Mr. Casper, if I understand this lease correctly, we allow the Baseball Association use of the land at no charge.
There is no monetary rent. There are duties that they have to perform in terms of maintenance of that facility and preparation of the softball field nearby.
And then we pay them for that maintenance.
The lease provides for a $43,000 payment from the city to them. I would note a couple of things in regard to that amount. Maybe the most important is that it's included currently in the 2010 budget, but and I should have mentioned earlier that it's a 1-year lease with 2 single-year options to renew. I assume it's likely to be another 3-year period like in the past. But the city is not under a firm obligation to make that payment. It gives the city specific authority in its budgetary process to annually review and approve that.
Okay. I just, reading this and understanding it, it just seems very lopsided. I understand there's benefits to having a minor league baseball team in the city of Beloit. I have great memories of attending games as a child and as an adult. But it seems to me that we could possibly work out a better agreement with the Baseball Association.
I'm somewhat responsive to that. Possibly the city approximately a year, maybe a little more than that ago, leased out space on at the facility for use by a cell service provider. I believe that is providing us roughly $15,000 $15,000 every 6 months for a total of $30,000 a year.
He's thinking on his seat. Yeah, he's a lawyer. He's thinking on his seat. Good man.
And that comes to the city, that money.
Right. And it's a tower that's on our land.
Yes, it's within the, it's on a light standard out there in the outfield.
Okay, you've answered my questions. Thank you.
Ms. DeForest?
I just would like to underscore that the Beloit Memorial High School teams and Beloit American Legion teams have use of those fields for their games. And Mr. Casper, do you have any estimate of how much it would cost us if we own the land to maintain it How much cost would that be for us?
Boy, I'd really like to defer that to Mr. Botts.
Don't have a good answer for you. You know, to maintain it to, you know, professional baseball standards, which, you know, obviously we wouldn't have to do that if, you know, we didn't, if there was not a professional baseball team using the facility. It'd be a lot less maintenance required. So to give you a number, it'd be really difficult to ballpark one. I'd say probably $43,275. But
I'll hold you to that. Do you know how many visitors from outside the city of Beloit are attracted to Snappers games? How many outside revenue that brings in, or how many visitors it brings into our Beloit community?
From what I understand is that the majority of the people who come to the game are from Janesville. So there are a lot of outside people who do come and enjoy the times at the ballpark.
Thank you.
All right, any additional counselor questions or comments? Ms. Johnson, or Mr. Noonan, rather?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to comment that the Snappers continue to be the #1 tourist attraction in the city of Beloit, generating revenues throughout our community. So it brings other values throughout the city.
Very well. Any additional counselor questions or comments? Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Johnson, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on Councilor DeForest's comment about the high school playing there. I realize that other organizations are using the field. My point that I was trying to make in this economy right now is that it seems to me that this contract could be negotiated. $43,000 to pay them to maintain property that they're using for free doesn't seem economically sound to me. So that's just the point I wanted to make. Thank you.
Any additional counselor questions or comments? All right, I'll go ahead and call the question. All in favor of 11B, please signify by aye. Aye. Those opposed? Nay. Very well, motion carries 6-0. Item number 12, 6-1, excuse me. Item number 12 is a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Levy, Ms. Johns, all in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Everyone have a good holiday season.